Tantor Audio presents Wolf's Capture by Langlais, narrated by Chandra Skyye. Prologue. Everyone dreaded the "I told you so" moment. You knew which one she meant. The event. And yes, she finger-quoted as she said it. In retrospect, it was quite easy to spot, as it was the catalyst that would forever alter the course of her life. And it was totally my fault. As Layla was dragged from her home, kicking and yelling, she couldn't help but flash back to her father's latest lecture, given just that morning. Before you jump to the conclusion her father was a strict disciplinarian, she should note she fully deserved the boring speech, considering he'd caught her, yet again, disobeying. Act of Defiance 161. He kept count.
You must hide what you are, Layla. Hide it well, because if anyone ever finds out, they'll come for you.
Blah, blah, blah. Nothing new here. She tuned out the rest of his speech, which went on for a while along that vein. The gist of the rebuke was,
don't use your power. Ever.
As in, never. Ever. Which sucked. Because really, how could she stifle it? Her skill, her super special top secret ability was a part of who she was. It lived within her, beckoned her. At times, she could feel it as it pulsed just under her skin. Much like a treat, it tempted and cajoled her into tasting. Just a nibble. Or in her case, a simple act. The barest thought, and poof! She could do incredible things. Special things. The older she got, the harder she found it to restrain herself. And why should she? I can't help who I am. A bird flies, a dog barks. My dad lectures. Why can't I just be me? Once she hit those rebellious preteen years, she stopped fighting her innate power. She let it loose. Such a relief. And once started, impossible to stop. She dabbled in the forbidden and loved it, which in turn led to more experimenting. If I can do this, then I wonder if I can do that. She conducted more trials, played, delighted in her developing ability. Her cockiness led to the "I told you so" moment. She thought herself alone in the hills when she let her senses fly. As she tickled the minds of the creatures around her, she not once sensed the eyes that watched or judged, never suspected the gaze that assessed. She never knew someone was there, but that was no excuse, nor did her ignorance save her. She only wished her folly hadn't cost her father's life. How she would have given anything to hear him say, "I told you so," one more time. The masked kidnappers came for her in the darkest hour of night, dragging her from her bed despite her shrill cries for aid. "Papa! Papa! Help me!" But her father couldn't save her. He'd not even been able to save himself. Layla did her best to escape, blasting forth with her untrained power, seeking help, but in the end, an unschooled girl, even with the small herd of spitting cats and cackling hens rampaging, was no match for grown men. In a cruel twist, the avian animals who came to her aid were shot down, plucked, and roasted. Even worse, while they smelled great roasting over an open fire, they tasted even better with salt and a dash of pepper. With no regard to her wishes, She was taken captive and her new life began. A prisoner treated like a prized goose, she was sold to the highest bidder. More than a slave, not quite a servant, she was both treasure and tool. Her first owner placed chains around her, real ones made of gold. Much like a songbird, he caged her and then lived to regret it, as did those who served him. During her first incarceration, she taught more than one person to fear the chirp of a canary. They might seem small and cute, but a flock of them could cause serious damage. It seemed she didn't take well to having her freedom curtailed, but that didn't stop her capture and sale to the next highest bidder. It didn't take long after her new keeper locked her away before she embarked upon what she now fondly recalled as escape number 2, an escape of opportunity. Given the lack of actual planning and her by-the-seat-of-her-pants execution, it was almost surprising how far she made it, and for how long. While her first bout for freedom lasted less than 24 hours, she learned from her mistakes. Escape number 2 netted her 6 months of glorious freedom. Until, once again, her cockiness got her in trouble. An article in a newspaper led the hunter to her. A gang of cats, yes, cats, are engaging in thievery. Several surveillance cameras have shown the feline burglars absconding with the oddest items: clothing, food, and, in the weirdest twist yet, a team of them made off with a comforter. Evolution of the cat? Behaviorists don't know. Unfortunately, her army of felines and their acts didn't go unnoticed. Oops. So much for escape number 2. Off she went to her third owner, who didn't believe in gold cages, but her next room, with its barred windows and door, wasn't much of an improvement. Thus did she hatch escape number 3, Rise of the Rats. Chapter 1. I don't know how those cats find this comfortable. Tree branches did not make the most pleasant of seats, especially if sat on for several hours. Normally, Brody wouldn't be found perched in a tree like a pea-brained bird. He preferred to keep his 2 feet, or 4 paws, on the ground. But he had a good reason for hiding in the treetop. As to how he got there, it had started hours before. It started with him waking early. Brody never woke early. He was a sleepin' late, hit the snooze button a few times kind of guy. But at the ungodly hour of 9 a.m., he rolled out of bed. He was in the office by 10 a.m., which caused his alpha, Reed, to question if he was all right. No, I'm not. Restlessness plagued him, an unease and sense that something was amiss. At first, he blamed it on too much coffee. For some reason, shifters didn't process caffeine as quickly as other drugs. An odd trait. 3 cups, strong enough to make him sprout hair without even trying, and Jan tossed him out of the office, claiming if he didn't stop pacing, she was going to shoot him and use his fur to make a jacket. Knowing Jan, she meant every word. He left and went on the prowl, sniffing every corner in Kodiak Point. Just doing my job. As Clan Beta, it fell upon him to ensure things ran smoothly and to note potential issues that might affect the safety or well-being of the clan. If something cropped up, he could either take care of the issue or report the problem to Reed. But not kill it. He was living in the civilized world now. Boring. So boring. But safe. No one was shooting at him. He ate regularly, got more sleep than needed, could shower whenever. Which totally sucked. A man craved a bit of excitement in his life. Whatever plagued his gut, which never steered him wrong and always knew when someone was hosting a barbecue, he didn't sniff it out in town. So Brody roamed farther, leaving the civilized areas. A bit of a misnomer, really, given the wild shifters living in the homes, and took to the woods. This time of the year, with so much daylight, life abounded, from the green leafy kind to the four-legged and furry. Insects thrived too, much to his irritation. He slapped at yet another mosquito determined to suck him dry. Mini-vampire bastards. Of all his abilities as a lichen, another name for wolf shifters, the one he would have really appreciated was one to counteract the itchiness of insect bites. He'd be scratching up a storm later, which meant he'd have to put up with Boris needling him about getting a flea collar. Stupid Moose thought he was so funny. Funny was Brody spraying silly string at Boris's antlers and hearing him bellow. A beautiful moment, caught forever on video. Scratching aside, Brody couldn't complain about the other benefits of being a lichen, such as quick healing, great health, a resistance to most diseases, and, of course, a kick-ass timber wolf he could swap into. Hey, let's not forget my awesome hair. A shaggy mane, which he kept long on his head, possibly in a fuck-you gesture to his old sergeant, who thought the only proper haircut was a bald one. Bzz. Another winged leech died. 10 more took its place. Given the insect problem, Brody could have shed his skin and let his thicker pelt protect him, but he decided to hold off. For one thing, his wolf form emitted a much stronger, noticeable scent, and his second reason was instinct, which said he needed to exercise patience, not something his beast side was known for.
Wait. Why wait? Hate watching. We need to act.
Say hello to his impulsive wolf. His lichen side did so hate inaction, and yet most of Brody's missions involved patience, observation, and planning. Then, when the right moment arrived, pounce on opportunity, which in most cases meant kick some ass. Those were times his wolf lived for, thrived. In the past, most of Brody's assignments involved violence, and that was when his wolf got to come out and play. But this wasn't wolf time, and this wasn't war. This was Kodiak Point, and for the moment, it was watch and wait time.
No biting.
No biting. A grown wolf shouldn't use puppy eyes on its human host. Good thing Brody was immune. He stayed two-legged and decided to find himself a hiding spot in the woods. His options? Tree. Other tree. Bush. Smaller bush. Big tree. No surprise, he went with the big tree in order to properly mask his presence. He needed something far from the ground. The higher, the better. Since most of the attacks involved shifters, many of whom possessed a keen nose, it was best to take every precaution, including one that reeked. Literally. Time to spritz himself with his lovely cologne. Oh, the stinky squirrel. Gag. It was one thing to chase a frisky, furry-tailed creature, another to smell one. To compound the insult, much like one of those chattering little rodents, he had to climb a tree. Piece of cake, and he knew just the kind. Rum-soaked chocolate cake with whipped cream between the layers and crushed cherries. Drool. Aunt Betty Sue, who wasn't his aunt, but insisted with a wag of her spoon that he call her that, made him one every year for his birthday. It took him but a moment to clamber his chosen airy. while wondering if he texted Aunt Betty Sue whether she'd bake one for him just for the hell of it. The woman loved to cook, and he loved to eat. It was a great friendship, especially since it gave him opportunities, behind Betty Sue's back, to taunt her son Travis mercilessly. And got the grizzly in trouble when he retaliated. Hee hee hee. For his hiding spot, Brody chose an old Sitka spruce, which towered well over 100 feet and provided ample cover. The branches were thick and sturdy. Brody did his best to climb while disrupting as little as possible. Nothing like a shower of greenery at the base of a tree to announce the presence of something overhead. The branch he chose was fat enough to hide him if he sat still. From his vantage point, he could glimpse parts of the town laid out before him, and perhaps catch an early peek at whatever was setting off his danger meter.
"Let it be something good. Edible,"
added his wolf. Brody would settle for anything if he got to act. Hours passed. The sun blazed, and nothing happened except for the irritated squeak of a squirrel acting territorial. Stupid creature dared to chatter at him, so Brody showed it some lip and growled. It wisely scooted away. It was the most exciting thing to happen so far. Hunger made his belly rumble. He ignored it. He'd gone longer without food in the past. Besides, Betty Sue had texted him to say she'd not only made him a cake, fist pump, she'd left him a lasagna in his fridge since she'd accidentally made an extra. The knowledge almost had him abandoning his observation post. The cruelty of having to wait. He fought the temptation. He did, however, sip sparingly from his flask. Water, not booze. A wolf never drank on the job. But after, he could totally picture getting rip-roaring drunk and singing off-key. Time rolled by without any action. The evening glared bright, the sun unwilling to lose its grip. Welcome to Alaska in the summertime, when daylight reigned supreme. Eventually, as the hour grew late, the mighty sun finally deigned to dive down past the horizon for a respite. And that was when Brody's hours of silent watching and waiting paid off. No sooner did the dark of night envelop the land than the figures came slinking, proving his gut right yet again. "I've still got the knack." At first, they crept in single digits, a lone wolf here, a jackrabbit there, a man who was more than a man and who never once bothered to look up. Idiot. Anyone so lax wouldn't prove much of a challenge. Good thing a couple of the interloper's buddies accompanied him on his stealthy trek toward town. They definitely emitted a seriously nefarious vibe. Or, as was known in the lichen world, promising a violently good time. What a way to celebrate the solstice, once he got out of the tree, preferably alive. The numbers were kind of against him. It wouldn't do to get noticed while he was here alone. Besides, think of the fun when he snuck up behind them and howled an attack. Since Brody didn't dare inhale too deeply or do anything that might emit the slightest sound, lest he give his presence away, this meant he couldn't identify what caste the slinking strangers belonged to, but he would have wagered his favorite knife, the blade sharp enough to shave with, that at least one of the males who'd gone by was some kind of ocean shifter, maybe seal.
"Bleh, want red meat."
His wolf had a definite preference. Maybe Brody would save that one for Jean, whose polar bear really enjoyed the occasional blubbery treat, with pepper. As for Brody, the only good seafood came with the shell, roasted over an open fire with a butter sauce for dipping. The salty-smelling fellow didn't travel alone. While those on two legs were few in number, from what Brody could discern from his perch, for all he knew, there were dozens a few hundred leagues over, approaching from the north, The wild beasts who accompanied the enemy shifters numbered in the dozens, probably more given Brody could only spot a small section. And still no audible warning from any of the sentries. The town was about to be attacked, and yet not a single sentry cried out. Not a single flare lit the sky in warning. Slackers. A good thing Brody had staked himself in the tree long enough to spy them, else the town would have been caught unprepared. But better than saving the day, he'd get to fight. I'm gonna get to hit something. Ow! Yes, he was excited. Brody craved the adrenaline of battle, and not just because he enjoyed hitting things. Keeping his skills honed took practice, but testing their efficiency required an opponent. And lucky him, he already had more than enough sneaking in from the northern section of these woods, an area that shouldn't have any kind of foot traffic. How did they make it past the sentries? And damn, will Jean be pissed about this? The head of the defensive perimeter, Jean had spent the last few weeks revamping their early warning system. They'd needed it. Some prick kept attempting to weaken the clan, to cause trouble. Sneaky shifters kept stealing while weirdly trained wildlife kept attacking in small spurts. Sure, a snarling raccoon on his own wasn't a big deal, but a swarm of them? The women of town would have warm hands this winter with all the new mittens they'd be making. So far, the people snicker. Okay, maybe he should call them what they were, shifters, of Kodiak Point, smacked down the assault by the oddly trained wild creatures each time. However, so far, most of the incursions were small and easily rebuffed. In the case of the rarer, large attacking groups, they'd received advance warning of incoming trouble from the sentries. Sentries that were currently silent despite the several 2- and 4-legged bodies he could see. If the boys on duty weren't already dead, they'd wished they were once Brody got through with them. Those guarding the borders to their clan land were supposed to raise the alarm at the slightest hint of anything hinky. Judging by the shadows that crept in under the cover of darkness, they'd failed. Or they were dead. In which case, I will avenge you. Given the number of enemy he'd seen pass by, this was the battle they'd waited for. On the eve of the summer solstice, only a few scant hours of night existed, a short window to launch a furtive attack. The ambushers knew enough of their defenses to either avoid or take out their early warning system. Someone planned well, but not well enough. The clan would meet the ambush because Brody would make sure of it. Muting the glow of his screen by tucking it inside his jacket, he fired off a quick text to Reed, Jean, and Boris. ATK, short for, "We're under attack. Get everyone's ass ready and armed." Ahoo! Party in the village tonight. Sorry, you sneaky suckers, but you're about to get a nasty surprise. Fun, fun, fun. But only if he ever got out of the bloody tree. When the last of the sneaky varmints passed under his unnoticed watch point, Brody swung himself down, dropping as silently as possible. The last thing he needed was for those who'd recently passed to hear him and turn around. Some might have questioned his courage at not confronting the horde, and to them, he said piss off. Only a stupid man attacked when the numbers were against him. Actually, not entirely true. Jean never calculated the odds. When that big-ass bear went into a berserker rage, he had no concept of odds. It was probably one of his more endearing traits. Smarts kept Brody from attacking, but never fear. When the time came, he would join the battle and rank high when it came to his share of kills. After all, he did have a reputation as a badass wolf to maintain, and a certain moose to put in his place. All about the rack, indeed. It was time to put those who thought their antlers were so mighty in their place. Never doubt the power of fur and fang. With his feet on the ground, and the attackers well out of sight, Brody wasted no time, shedding his clothes and tossing them at the base of the tree, before letting his flesh ripple and his shape twist until he stood in his four-legged form. He stretched, a mighty timber wolf with brindled fur, sharp teeth, and a howl that could carry for miles.
Antlers can't do that.
But they did make great chandeliers. Oh, how Boris didn't appreciate the ornate one Brody had sent him on his birthday. Ungrateful moose. Sucking in a deep breath, Brody howled, an ululating cry meant to warn any inhabitant still slumbering or unaware. Someone heard his warning and passed the message along. The quiet of night soon filled with snarls and roars as his kin, not military-trained and less prone to quiet, prepared to meet the menace threatening them.
Welcome to Kodiak Point. We might seem civilized from the outside, but threaten us, and we will tear your throat out.
And that was just the men. The women could prove even more vicious if you threatened their cubs and pups. Brody didn't know a woman in town who didn't have some kind of recipe passed down to deal with naughty kin. Brody's grandfather used to lament the good old days, when one of the most sought-after delicacies was traiteur tourtière, an old recipe from some French settlers that relied on several species donating some meat. Lest you think his grandfather was an utter carnivore, keep in mind, the pie also sported a thick, flaky crust, and potatoes, soaked in the juices of lots of meat. Tongue-lolling. Satisfied the town was alert and ready to meet the charge of attackers, Brody prepared to rush the enemy from behind, only to stop as an unusual scent caught his attention. Exotic, sweet, and mysteriously compelling.
What is that smell?
It blew to him from the north, on the wings of a gentle breeze. The brush of it across his nose teased and distracted him. He didn't recognize it, but he knew enough to wager it wasn't human. Not entirely. Nor was it animal. So what did that leave? Did it matter? The enemy was closing in on the town he called home. Did he really have time to chase down strange smells? Could he afford to ignore it? Hadn't his Sarge said,
"Never let something inexplicable go uninspected,"
especially when it came to reconnoitering? So long as sniffing away from the main trail didn't affect a current, time-sensitive mission, then the hunting down of the unusual was encouraged. After all, sometimes it took only one clue to stop a war, and the clan was on the verge of war. Screw verge. They were about to engage in one, given the numbers now approaching the outskirts of town. But who was the one behind it? In the last year, while the clan of Kodiak Point had repelled more than their fair share of attacks and problems, they'd yet to catch a glimpse of the perpetrator. No one knew who he was. No one remembered his face. And no one had a name. What if the odor belonged to the mastermind behind the violent attacks being perpetrated against them? What if this scent, this oddity in the forest, was a clue, and the chance they'd waited for to take out, once and for all, the mysterious figure fucking with their lives? Tough decision. Fight or explore? He knew his wolf's answer, and it wasn't easy keeping those 4 feet planted while he took an extra moment to analyze his choices. Arg! Both were so tempting. Maybe he didn't have to choose. First part of the mission, capture the weird smell. Then, in Phase 2, hopefully catch the tail end of the fight. I'll have my lasagna, my cake,
and knowing Aunt Betty Sue once the violence is over with.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?